Welcome everybody. We're here with Stephen Gilligan, leading teacher of Ericksonian hypnotherapy and also generative psychotherapy, and one of the original NLP developers from 40 plus years ago. And today we're talking about his new book, Generative Trance. And I would like to welcome you, Stephen.
Hi,
Thank you.
Great to be here.
Thank you. And what I would like to ask you, what is it about, Generative Trance?
Well, about the work I've been doing over the last many years, but maybe a simple answer is what I suggested in this book is that there is a third generation of trance work that's sort of waiting to be done, and that's what I mean by generative trance.
Mm-hmm.
And if we talk about three generations, we've got the first generation, which is the authoritarian booga booga, which is unfortunately, what the vast majority of people, both lay people and practitioners, conjure up as an image of one person giving direct suggestions to another person. And the idea there is sort of like for trance to occur, the hypnotist takes a sort of a hammer and knocks the person out, and they go unconscious, and then I tell you, you will stop smoking. And whether you smoke or not, that's supposed to have some meaningful effect. And, aside from the lack of aesthetics and respect for a person that's implicit in that, direct hypnosis often falls very short in terms of long-term benefits. It looks promising, looks spectacular, you get full body levitation, past lives and so forth, but the changes don't really integrate. And I think in part because they're not fitting within a person's own values and a person's own maps. It's a very artificial external language. So the second generation of trance work was developed by Milton Erickson. And he had this notion that rather than the unconscious being like a 2-year-old idiot that needs to be ordered around, that the unconscious has this creative intelligence and a wisdom that can be invited to be able to be the lead system at certain points in a person's life. And furthermore, Erickson had this notion that to reach the unconscious, that rather than giving direct literal commands, it was more important to find a sort of metaphorical way to use a person's language, enter into their space, and see if the trance that opened up could be a natural trance that was reflective of a person's own individual maps, if you will.
Yeah.
Which is great. I mean, it's a very, very radical change.
Yeah.
That's where I started. The problem that I see with the Ericksonian work is that this notion that the conscious mind is an idiot is still present implicitly in the Ericksonian work.
Yeah.
So you have this idea, sort of as the hypnotist or the therapist, I know the truth about you, but you couldn't handle it. So I've got to put you into a trance and indirectly talk to your unconscious because your conscious mind just couldn't handle the truth. And so it sets up this sort of the executive power, if you will, in terms of the external agent, i.e. the hypnotist. So it creates problems, and I would say, Erickson is my teacher of teachers, and I just have, still have reverence and respect for him. And one of the shortcomings, in 40 years, I've seen a lot of patients of his and a lot of students, and the one thing that drives me nuts is when I hear people say, the next time that my next crisis that hits, which is, I always tell clients, it's just right around the corner, between the next time that we say the shit hits the fan, that my sense of what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into trance and I'm going to listen to what Milton would tell me to do. Well, to me that's ridiculous. I mean, you even have books that are titled "And My Voice Will Go With You." I mean, the guy's dead. Mm-hmm. Who wants some dead guy's voice walking around inside of you? It's hard enough, trying to hear your own voice. Yeah. So in the third generation, I tried to see how you can put what I call the Erickson function, which is this capacity that Erickson had to model a conscious mind that was not controlling, that was not disconnected, but that was curious and really in a close reciprocal connection with the creative unconscious. That if Erickson could do it, can you teach clients how to do that too? And if so, then they can be their own best hypnotists, if you will. And so that's what I mean by a generative trance. A trance in which there is this reciprocal respect and conversation between what we call in the trance work the conscious mind and the unconscious mind.
And how does that communication work between the conscious and unconscious mind? Because you talk a lot about it in the book. How do they communicate?
Well, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, but you could say, if you talk about what are the important parts of the conscious mind that the unconscious mind doesn't have.
Yeah.
Conscious mind can hold intention. It has what McGilchrist, the guy who does this beautiful work on hemispheric research, talks about in English the power of the 3 L's: language, logic, and linearity. So it's able to verbally represent things, which is a uniquely human part of experience. It just transforms everything. It's able to set these intentions, and it's able to put things in sequences so that you can arrive at those intentions. The unconscious is not very good at that. The unconscious is more holistic. In the unconscious, you can go anywhere from anywhere. That's one of its strengths. You're not bound into, well, I'm in this place and therefore it means this, or therefore this comes next. It's like from here, I can go here, I can go here, I can go here. It's unbound. So that's a resource, because when you need to come up with new ideas, you need that capacity.
Yeah.
But it's also its shortcoming, because it means that you can't put all your ducks in the same row. So I think it's not too difficult a thing to see. If you look at any creative people, creative performers, creative artists, is that they will always be talking about this conversation between their 2 minds.
So it's like a cooperation.
It's a cooperation, and there's a mutual respect. They say, if you listen to writers, they say, well, I set it up, I've got an intention, I'm ready to write the new piece, I do whatever I do to go into a sort of a trance, and then the characters begin to come to me. And you hear the sense where the characters come to me to tell a story.
Yeah.
And then the first pass of the writing is that I'm just a transcribed, so to speak. But that's not a finished product. Just to bring the unconscious into the world, it's not finished. You have to do a lot of editing. Yeah. And this managerial work, this editing, this sort of throwing out the superfluous stuff, the sharpening up, the testing, is what the conscious mind does really well. So you need that conversation. And unfortunately, in our cultural traditions especially, there's a division of labor. So the conscious mind is a disembodied intellect that is not in a good connection with the somatic-based creative unconscious. So most of the time people in their normal state are stuck in their heads. And so people think of trance as reversing that. Yeah. So I go from here to here. Yeah. And that might be helpful as a way to let go, just like drinking a bottle of beer may be helpful to letting go, but it won't put you into a creative state.